Wow. Is this working? Can you hear me? Thank you. I so wish my kids could hear that because I think that to them, I drive them around a lot. But thank you so much for sharing your time this afternoon. I'm thrilled to talk about these ideas. These ideas really came from, as Joseph mentioned, I work in I'm an assistant professor in the teacher education department. And a couple of years ago, I really became aware of my students who are teachers, who are going into the schools, really not understanding the cultural context and the historical context of the schools that they were going into. And that kind of got me thinking about what can we do? How can I present this in a way that perhaps they might, that will help give them the context. During that same time, I'm a runner, and I was running through the desert, and kind of from nowhere, again and again, the words "choose beauty" came into my head. And it happened enough that I just kind of started to pay attention, and I started to look at the land around me. And I thought, what lessons does the land have? What can we learn? And that's really kind of where where these ideas came from. I will tell you that these ideas are very new. They're very emergent. I'm exploring. I'm playing with them. This is really a journey that we'll all go on together. I welcome your thoughts. I welcome any ideas that you have, because this is really something that we're going to be exploring and experiencing together right now. Before we start, I wanted to ground us. Two of my favorite writers have specific rituals, which I find help ground a space to be safe, to be sacred, to be open. And I like to start any talk with those. And one is Isabel Allende, the Chilean writer. Before she sits down to write, she always lights a candle to invite the spirits to be with her as she's writing. And so, in honor of inviting the spirits, in honor of Isabel Allende, in honor of openness, I wanted to light a candle. And another writer who really has inspired and informed my work is Terry Tempest Williams. And for those of you who are familiar with her, before she ever sits down to write, she always has a cup of water on her desk. And that reminds her that even when it feels like nothing's happening, that water is evaporating and change is occurring and transformation is occurring. So in honor of, even during the quiet moments, or even during the times we feel like nothing may be happening, transformation is occurring. So I'm going to set that right here. But as we get started, I think everybody, when you came in, hopefully you grabbed a rock or a bead. Does anybody not have one right now? If you don't, maybe Noe, could you bring up a couple of stones or beads? Thank you. I know that we have just this brief period of time together, and I know that we all lead very demanding lives that tend to stick their tendrils into wherever we are. And so what I'd like to do is just ground us for this little brief period of time in this space. And go ahead and feel that bead or stone, and just kind of take in the texture, the elemental nature of it. And if I invite you to close your eyes, I invite you to close your eyes. I'm just going to ground us in a brief vignette. This is by Ellen Malloy, who wrote The Anthropology of Turquoise, an exquisite book, which I highly recommend. But go ahead and just close your eyes, hang on to that stone or that bead. Let all of the things that we walked in here just kind of slip away just for this tiny bit, and we'll embark on this exploration together. On the desert horizon at dusk, where red rock meets lapis sky, at the seam of the Union runs a band of turquoise, recumbent upon the land's great darkness. This color is transient. Before night falls, blue-green is the last quantum of visible light to pass through the atmosphere without scattering. It can draw a person right down to the skin of the world. The tidal pull of light can shape an entire life, every heart-warmed pulse of blood and breath. So as I was thinking of, as I was starting, I thought, well, what was my first memory of turquoise? Where did this journey, or where did it begin? And as Joseph mentioned, I did grow up on a cattle ranch in the San Pedro River Valley of southeastern Arizona, in an area called Cascabel. And I remember on the front of the ranch house was this huge stone that actually looked very similar to this that's up there. And I remember, and I was maybe only 7 or 8 at the time, and I remember seeing this stone, and it was right beside a metate, for those of you that the stones where you grind the corn. And I remember running my hands, felt like lichen, and I remember running my hands over it. So take a moment and just think, what is your first memory of turquoise, or when you think of turquoise, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? And go ahead and share that with the person sitting beside you. Whoever, introduce yourselves if you haven't met yet. What is that first memory?
That's your first memory. What's your first memory? Same similar? I was seeing it in my home. And Mike probably first. We stayed outside it. Did you find turquoise stones up there? In the rough?
También aquí el color, I remember from Pueblo.
We were down in my office, the energizer.
Y también
Energy.
for the baby.
So we'll come back together as a group. Didn't that sound, it's a rain stick? So what are some of those, go ahead and just toss them out. What are some of the first memories that you have? Anybody? An engagement necklace. Beautiful. A fetish engagement necklace. Beautiful. Thank you. Others? Wow. Beautiful. Painting the sky turquoise. Oh, his wedding band, his wedding ring. Others? Her grandfather gave her a turquoise ring for her 16th birthday. One more. Yes. Her mother's squash blossom. So let's, Erwin.
The door frames, the window frames at Pueblo, the color, and also the first time I got to see Sacred Blue Lake.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
It's a brilliant turquoise color.
So as I'm listening, it's amazing, and it's exactly what we're about ready to start looking at, is the heart and the story and the healing and the love that has kind of threaded between these various stories and what that stone represents. Let's look at how does turquoise come into being? Let's see here if it occurs almost exclusively in arid lands. So where we live right now, I mean, turquoise is a very unique place. Turquoise doesn't occur or isn't created around most of the world. The surface materials that it's needed are copper, aluminum, phosphates, and iron. And it needs a volcanic disturbance, is required to make the cracks and fissures in the earth. And I think this is really key. So not only does it need to be in an arid place, there needs to be that volcanic disturbance to create the seams. And water is a necessary component. And then water runs down into those seams, and that's how the stone of turquoise is created. So I wanted to focus on that it only occurs in arid lands, that volcanic disturbance is needed, and that water is a necessary component. So let's look now at, okay, so we're talking about migration, we're talking about immigration, and we've touched based on turquoise. Let's look, and as Erwin talked about in his, this is really, it's been an amazing lecture series. I've learned so much, and Erwin spoke about, Erwin Rivera about Aztlán Sin Fronteras. And one of the things that we explored in that talk is, okay, so here's Chaco Canyon. So essentially this is, you know, kind of near where we are. And we're going to look right now at what turquoise has been found in this area. And also we're going to look at, so here we are clear up here, and then also we're going to look at the turquoise that we find that occurred down here in the Aztec Empire. And there is no turquoise that occurs naturally down here, so we know that this followed this well-worn path, as Erwin called it, the Camino Real, as we refer to it. They were following a well-worn path. And so we're going to study, or we're going to look at this migration that has been occurring over tens of thousands of years. Whoops. So first, Chaco. How many of you have been to Chaco or have been one? Yeah. Wonderful. Well, this is a pendant. This is a bead of turquoise that was found in Chaco Canyon, or in Pueblo Bonito. 2 men were buried with 56,000 pieces of turquoise that were found. It was obviously a highly prized, highly sacred, highly valued stone. The earliest turquoise jewelry dates from between 500 to 700 AD. Much of it came from around mines around that area, and a lot of it we know came from the Cerrillos mine, which is right here near Santa Fe. Whoops. We also know that turquoise was a highly prized stone in the Aztec Empire. Runners were running that well-worn path, and the Aztecs in their empire were creating amazing works of art and mosaic with this turquoise, in exchange for shells, in exchange for feathers, things that we didn't have, up here. But if we look at, so turquoise, the Aztec double-headed serpent, which came from the 15th century, and legend has it that the Aztec emperor Moctezuma was bedecked in turquoise from our Cerrillos mines when he had the encuentro, the encounter with the Spaniards. So let's look at, so now we've kind of traveled, we've touched based on the turquoise of the past, turquoise in Chaco, turquoise in the Aztec Empire. Let's look at what is it about this stone in our contemporary times that speaks to so many people. We're going to look at Zuni understandings of turquoise. And one of it's thought to have supreme life-giving power. And the blue turquoise is associated with Father Sky, and the green turquoise with Mother Earth. So between the two of them, powdered turquoise accompanies prayer. Many times fetishes, and I brought some up here, are carved from turquoise. And ground turquoise is mixed in with the corn to feed the fetishes. So there's some of that up here if you'd like to pass by after the presentation. It's used in fetishes to enhance their power. And the Kachina dancers wear turquoise. Can you see that? Let me move, excuse me. And again, these are these are foundational understandings. These are what is it about this stone? What does this stone symbolize for the peoples who live in the Southwest? The Dene or the Navajo. Turquoise is one of the 4 sacred stones, along with abalone, white shell, and jet. There's a line in the turquoise by Anya Seton, which is a wonderful book, and for those of us who live in this area are familiar with Anya Seton's work. Your power comes from the spirit. It is a Navajo who gives a child a stone of turquoise and tells her, so you never forget that your power comes from spirit. Sheepherders carried a turquoise fetish to promote fertility of the sheep, and hunters to ensure success in the hunt, warriors to ensure victory and safe return. And a bead of turquoise was fastened to a lock of hair as protection from lightning and snake bite. So again, we see these words: safe return, protection, sacred, spirit. The Pueblo peoples call the turquoise the sky stone. They say it takes the color from the sky, and it brings good fortune and protection to the wearer. And then we move from the Spaniards and the use of blue and the use of turquoise and what resonates among when the Spanish came. And look at the color of the Virgen of Guadalupe's robe. What color is that? Mm-hmm. The blue doors, or the turquoise doors of Spain, which we know came up from Morocco when the Moors came over and colonized Spain. And the blue doors represent protection against evil spirits. Western European Anglo understandings of turquoise, the color of communication, self-awareness, and initiative. More to do with the feeling of creative expression than with rational thought. The stone of wisdom and spiritual journeys symbolizes truthfulness, healing, peace, brotherhood, and creativity. So hanging out with that stone that you have in your hand right now and with the person you just spoke with, what are some of the ideas that really resonated with you? Or what are some of the ideas when you think turquoise, what are the first ideas that jump into your mind? Go ahead and talk with the person who you're sitting beside.
Anything?
My first experience with turquoise is during the Vietnam War, when one of my friends started to make turquoise in their jewelry. So that was my first experience with it.
Of a turquoise room I met
In Mexico, traveled all around. When I came back,
Yellow
I was reminded of the
house with pink outside.
colors, the blue green.
Like that. You find that a lot in
Right.
South America.
Do you feel any spiritual power or anything from it, or it's just the calmness?
What are some of the words that resonated with you, or what did you hear? Go ahead and just toss them out. Creativity, beauty, protection, peace, sacred, unity, honor. Thank you. Let's look at, so what's so intriguing to me is in all of these different traditions, there are common threads of understandings about the symbolism of this stone. Let's look at, now, we're going to look at migration. We here in the Southwest have a long history of migration, and we're going to touch base on where we are right now is known as Aztlan, and historically has been known as Aztlan. Erwin Rivera did a wonderful job talking about that and informing our understandings with his presentation. But the oldest campsites in the Southwest are 20,000 years old. So we know that people have been living here in the Southwest for 20,000 years. In 1000 BC, descendants of the original Cochise peoples migrated to Mexico and to Central America. And of course, I always think about this whenever I hear people say, well, why don't they just go home? Well, they are. So that's something that always rings when I hear that. The Uzo-Aztecian languages stemmed from the language of the Cochise people. The Cochise people were here in Arizona, and the Aztecian languages have been traced to these people from the Aztec Empire. So we have a long, long, long tradition of this being a well-worn, well-traveled corridor of migration here in the Southwest. So when did all of a sudden migration become immigration? And so let's look at this map. This is a map of Mexico in 1847. And we still see, well, here you can kind of see the outlines of Texas, but you can still see it's pretty wide open. There's still this main corridor. There's still a path. And then suddenly, what happens in 1848? Who knows? And then what happens right after that? How do they end it? The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And suddenly what had been a corridor of migration, what had been open, what had been a place of cultures, all of a sudden there was all of a sudden there was an imposed frontera, an imposed border, an imposed line. And when families say the border didn't, I didn't cross the border crossed me. And that's for Noé's family. His family is from the south of Texas, what is now, and we were talking about this, and he said, you know, we never really did figure out if my grandfather was American or Mexican, because he kind of was, he was both during that time. He said, and it didn't matter. We just kind of wondered sometimes. So all of a sudden, we have these tens of thousands of years with commerce, with people, with moving, with families, with up and down and up and down and back and forth. And suddenly, there's this imposed barrier, and suddenly it's not migration, it's immigration. So let's look a little bit at immigration right now. It's something that we here in the Southwest are really, I mean, we are right in the throes of it. The conversations, the dialogue, we hear it, the news, what's happening. We are really at the heart of this, and it's one of the reasons why I am so thankful that we're all together today talking about these ideas. Immigration, frontera, cicatrices en la tierra. And this is a sign in Nogales, Mexico. It said immigration, it said scars in the land. And I think that this one photo really captured that to me, the idea of scars in the land. And I wanted to just talk about, why are people immigrating? Why are people coming to the United States? That isn't the whole intent of this talk, but we'll touch briefly on the necessity for many people to come to the United States, to risk life and limb and give up everything they know, to give up their language, to give up their families, and really to risk death in order to come to the United States. And one bit of information that I found, this is in a book by Terry Green Sterling, that in 2008, if unmarried adult children of Mexicans with green cards wish to obtain a visa to join their parents in the U.S., the average wait time is 192 years. Or hire a smuggler and risk your life. So now this ancient corridor of migration suddenly just within the last, when we look at the arc of time, in this last little tiny blip, there's this rupture. Let me look at another. So Gloria Ansaldúa writes about the border, a 1,950-mile-long open wound, dividing Pueblo, a culture, running down the length of my body, staking fence rods in my flesh, splits me, me raja. This is my home, this thin edge of barbed wire. And for those of you who are familiar with with immigration, you know that some of the main corridors where people walk, which has now been forced into some of the most dangerous areas of Arizona, is there's water bottles, there's clothes, there's the artifacts, there's things that people leave behind as they're walking. One of the things that Terry Green found there was this little teeny tiny prayer book that she said couldn't have weighed more than a matchbox. And she wondered what made somebody give up this thing, this tiny prayer book. And inside it read, Dearest infant Lord Jesus, who accompanied by your sainted parents Mary and Joseph, knew the bitterness of leaving your homeland for Egypt, we ask you on behalf of all the children who are homeless immigrants and refugees, these children who suffer as you once suffered, we ask that their parents find work, food, and a home, and that they always be received with love, that outsiders they may treat them as brothers, and that you please keep their bodies and souls safe. And then into kind of in the other side of that are the lyrics from a song by the Sidewinders. Coyote's gone with most of our money and all of our hope. Left us just this side of Mexico. Home feels like heaven compared to this. I know the buzzards overhead hold salvation in their kiss. If it's this bad, crazy sun that makes me think like that. I lost my mind and I lost my soul, and I know that I'm never going home. So suddenly again, these ancient corridors of migration, a whole new chapter is being written right now in these well-worn, these well-traveled paths. So I wanted to touch on nepantlismo. I think in English I don't even know what it is, nepantalism. It's an idea that Gloria Anzaldúa, who writes about border issues, really has brought into our understandings in thinking about the border and looking about the border. And it's an Aztec word meaning torn between ways. And she describes the U.S.-Mexican border as una herida abierta. It's an open wound where the third world grates against the first and bleeds. And before a scab forms to hemorrhage again, the lifeblood of two worlds merge to form a third country, a border culture. With the person you were just talking with, what do you know about the border culture? When you hear border, what are the first things you think of? Go ahead and with the person you were just talking with, just talk about the first things that come to your mind.
Border. I think of Juarez because Juarez is a place where we often went to buy what we couldn't afford in New Mexico, sugar, food, similar. So border for me has always been kind of Juarez. So it's really cold.